This is Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall. CJAD 800.
That is James MENNIE. He is over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, I just want to start with this because I read something about this morning and wanted you to weigh in on this. So what is it? A couple weeks ago, Stephen Harper crawls out from the rock he's been hiding under for quite some time, at least involving himself politically, and decides to throw his hat behind fully endorsed Pierre Poilievre, which kind of surprised people, and maybe not some, but now we're starting to see some backlash on that. Why? What's going on?
Well, what's happening is Nanos Research decided to, after Mr. Harper came out, it's the first time he's endorsed a leadership candidate for the Conservative Party of Canada. And some eyebrows were raised, mine included. Anyway, Nanos Research decided to do a snap poll on what people felt about that endorsement, whether it made them more likely to support Poilievre, less likely. And what's fascinating, they did about 1,000 people across the country. 35% of respondents said they had a more negative impression of Poilievre because of the endorsement from Harper, as opposed to 14% who were left with a more positive impression. But where things get really interesting, guys, is that the breakdown, the highest amount of negativity, if you will, was in Ontario. It stood at 38.2%. Followed closely by Quebec with 36.2%. Those two provinces may sound familiar to us because you need them to win national elections.
Right.
And quite frankly, I would say not since Francois Legault said, vote for everybody, don't vote for anybody except the Conservatives, and the Conservatives ended up losing a seat in Quebec, have I seen a more, backfiring endorsement than I have now. People forget, and I said this, back in 2015. Justin Trudeau did not win the 2015 election. Stephen Harper liked it. He lost it, and he lost it because people don't like him. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. He just rubs a lot of people the wrong way, and that sense of ickiness, if you will, perseveres to this day. So I'm not really sure this was a very, well thought out move by the former Prime Minister. Mind you, once again, it still looks like Mr. Poilievre is lead pipe cinched to win the leadership of the party. However, as people have pointed out to him, I know he's running to be Prime Minister. He'll probably end up leader. But with these numbers, with these kinds of impressions, it's highly unlikely he will be Prime Minister of Canada. I'll tell you right now. And guys, I want to raise something now with you. It's very important because I want to get this off my chest. I was listening to the last half hour of the show, okay? And first of all, it was great. It was a great segment that you did. And it reminded me that over the course of my career, I have discovered that sometimes the news is staring you right in the face and you don't see it because you're so busy looking for what you think the news is. So given what you heard of the last half hour from all those callers about going back to work, I personally can't think of one, but can you think of a single politician at any level of government representing any party whatsoever who has even alluded to this reality, that people are basically used to staying home now, that in fact the world has changed, and as you pointed out, Aaron, it has changed radically over the past 2 years.
No, I mean, no one's talked about it at all. The only people talking about it are people like, Glenn Castanera downtown looking for at merchants there, and people who are, with the Chamber of Commerce spending money to put up art installations. I think the rest of us have just figured this is the way it is. If you were a politician, Jim, would you want to stick your nose into this, and what would be your solution?
Mm-hmm. Well, it wouldn't be a solution, but we'd have to recognize that reality before we start spending a few more billion on, commuter trains that theoretically are being put together to draw people into the downtown. We have to realize that the reality that's emerging is that not only are people not coming downtown, they like being where they are. This entire reality we all grew up with, right? You commute, you get up in the morning, and as you guys pointed out, you spend no small amount of your day simply commuting, be it on public transit or in your car. You have to get ready to go for work. You've got to get awake to go to work. And over the past 2 years, people have discovered that there is another way. It's an easier way. It is, in many cases, a more satisfying way. And it's a way that I think a lot of people, i.e. voters, will be very, very, negatively affected if we see more and more companies, or indeed if governments sit on their hands while this clear societal change is going on and not provide any solutions? Would it be worth it for governments, with all the aid they're giving businesses and corporations, to help out companies perhaps to more fully establish a work-from-home system? Because, as I say, I don't think people are going to suddenly change their minds. I think, honestly, it may be surprising that it only took 2 years, but I think the entire template that has been spot-welded into our brains, basically for the past generation and a half, has suddenly been torn away, and people do not want to have it reapplied.
But what's going to give? Because something's got to give, right? I was saying it's either the employers or the employees. Something's got to give here, and what politician's going to have a solution? Well,
part of the solution, I would think, is realizing that the change has occurred. As I say, I haven't heard anybody address this in any way, shape, or form.
No, you're right.
Everyone's talking like it's 2019. Don't worry, it's behind us now.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the way things were. And the vast majority of people, and I think the past half hour of the show was an excellent indicator of that, are just saying, no, we don't want to go back to the way things were. We're kind of kicking ourselves in the head over the way things were and how much time we wasted, how much time we spent commuting and away from our families, and basically sort of having that part of our lives squeezed out of us.
And who could have seen that coming, Jim, right? When you think about who could have possibly seen that coming, we thought this would last however long, whether you were an optimist or a pessimist, a year, 2 years. It's 2.5 years in, and as you just said, there's no sign that this is going to change.
There's no sign that it's going to change, but on the other hand, as I say, there's no indication that governments are ready to deal with that fundamental change in how we do things.
But how do you adopt a position for something that's never happened before and which you then have to kind of walk strategically and say what? I mean, you could secure a whole lot of votes if you said, you know what, we love the idea of this work from home. We're going to make it something where if you want to stay home 3 days a week, you can. You can't even say that, because all that does is upset employers, and they have a lot of votes as well. So what do you do? How do you pick a side?
I would respectfully submit employees have more votes than employers, hence, the whole ratio of employees versus bosses. But the thing is, if you don't address this one way or another, you are going to have a crash. As Natasha pointed out, employers have a very simple choice. You either make it super sweet for people to come in, or they won't come in. Or as callers or texters have been telling you, I will not go back. I will find a job someplace else. And in the middle of a labor shortage right now, guys, I don't think that's a very good place to be in, especially if you're trying to resurface your company after 2 years of a pandemic.
So I'm going to take this one step further. Let's say you're that employer. You realize this is the predicament you're facing. You decide, okay, I understand my employers want me to cover their costs for gas, commuting, etc. You add that money to their paycheck enough that they'll simply say, oh, okay, now I'm ready to go back.
No, it's still not quality of life.
So what does that do? If you're someone who produces something, all you're going to do is tack that money onto what you're producing, and suddenly everything is going to cost you even more than it does now by virtue of the fact that you're paying your employees that much more money.
But you're still working in the template of they've got to come downtown, they've got to be here. Well, a lot of places still functioned well, in some cases better, by people not being there, by people being able, yes, to focus on their jobs, completely focus on their jobs, but not have to express that focus through a 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 hours of commuting every day. And it is a change. It's a quality of life issue. We heard a lot of it before the pandemic. You may recall that a lot of politicians were saying, this is a big grind, and it's really tough for people to be in politics. We need a better work-life balance. I agree with you completely, Monsieur or Madame la Députée. But that said, a lot of us as well discovered, hey, we need more of a balance as well. So all I'm saying is maybe it won't be an issue this time around in the election, although you never know, because who knows how this thing is going to unfold.
It should be.
But all that said, I think you can no longer pretend it's 2019.
Yeah, I get that.
Things are the same.
I get that. That's true. The question is, what do you then do? How are we going to react? I love what you said, by the way, about the REM, right? Here's something designed to help people go from where they were to get downtown to avoid all those problems, and those people are simply not there.
No, merci.
Wow.
But the problem as well is the expression bedroom community, right? Because that was the thing. All around, they're all bedroom communities. Go around those bedroom communities now and see how many commercial buildings they have. See how completely economically, in terms of service industries and whatever, self-sufficient they are
you're
in
right.
Montreal.
100%.
That's why downtown right now is sweating bullets, because they have got to be able to draw people in with something, with all due respect, more than art, displays. And I'm not sure whether they have that. I'm not sure whether they can turn that around.
I agree. This is very much a case of anything you can do, I can do better. If you're in one of those communities, you don't need to go downtown. Everything you need, as you've just said, you can find where you are. So how's that ever going to change? James MENNIE at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, thank you.
Adamant.